Welcome to Wisdom Unveiled. We're happy you've joined us for the study and discussions on the Emerald Tablets by Billy Carson and other authors. Parisha, an ancient text interpreter and tablet reader, will be hosting this weekly event. She'll be joined by associate speakers from the LCF HD each session, and lines will be open for discussions. So join us on Mondays at 5:30 Pacific Time as we complete the book, and it will be on our YouTube channel, Learning Center for Human Development. And check out our blog at emeraldtabletstudies.com. We will schedule to have anyone that has further studies to join us on the session and share your knowledge. Join us as we read and discuss over the next few weeks the mysteries of time before time. There are many researchers who say this is the source of our religious scriptures and written by God Himself. Come with us on this journey of discovery. Now here is our host, Parisha.
Happy to see all of your faces. And we're going to begin to study this because there's quite a large number of people over the period of my teaching life that have actually had many questions about their religions, their scriptures, and many times faulting the particular religious space that they're actually worshiping with and staying with. And I feel that's so unnecessary when you do have the facts and the truth. It really doesn't disprove your faith. It actually enhances your faith so that it makes more sense. It's only logical that through trying to determine what times certain things in our history happen, okay, we need to only look to our own capabilities today, even with all the technology we have, how things get misguided as to time, location, and place. Okay, so we're looking at the Emerald Tablets. We're actually looking at a history that is so far back there. I don't even think we have the ability in our mind to think that many numbers. One of the things that Mike had brought up on one of our conversations is how do you even fathom a number that big? Okay, so we've been taught, and most of what we can look at as far as our educational system, we've been taught that we as a being is probably around 20,000 years in existence. Okay, I know that as far as my life's lessons and as a tablet reader, I've always been aware that my elders and our particular tablets show us that we are billions of years old in evolution, we, the human, and that we have gone through various changes. One of the fascinating times for me, and I'm looking forward to the things we're going to be sharing with the Emerald Tablets, is that you actually have a lot of valid stuff in your scriptures, and that this just gives you justification to understand it better. It's like the randomness in most people's scriptures leaves a big gap of questions, and unfortunately most clergy people would say to you, you have to accept it on faith. And obviously those of us who are on this particular way here, that wasn't enough. We needed a lot more input and a lot more understanding. So when we begin to do that, and we understand that there was a period of time to where inside our physical engineering and in our genetics, we were given something called free will. Okay, instead of being on the command program of what we are going to understand are the Anunnaki and even an older. Okay, we in my culture, especially that I was based on Cherokee culture. Okay, we call them ancients. We don't have a word for alien, and we understood we don't have a word for gods. Again, those are the ancients. Okay, and so when we begin to look at how old their history is and how we are a physical invention, we are a physical engineering of them in the field of genetics. And I'm on some of the leading edge sciences that we do today with genetics. Okay, you have to be buried in the sand if you don't know we're already doing cloning. Okay, that you don't already know how our scientists have already been messing with genetics. So it kind of helps you understand the you that you're trying to spiritually discover, and to understand the actual reason and rhyme of your presence here, and including all of the vastness of us as a universal being. So in that, we hope to discuss a lot of that and come to greater discussion on that as we go through Billy's book here. Billy Carson is an amazing young man. Okay. And when I had not heard of Billy probably 6 months ago, and then I started doing some research on him, and by some mysterious reason, and the lady that works with me as my assistant said to me, here's the book you ordered. And she handed me this book. And I said to her, I didn't order that book. And she said, yes, you did. You told me to get this book. So then I ended up with this book in my hand. Okay. And then I started wondering, why do I need this book? And we were already studying the actual work of the Emerald Tablets without Billy's assistance and genius of interpretation. So then when I looked at that, I realized this allows for greater discussion. This really puts it to where we can get a lot of different minds, a lot of genius talking and sharing and actually hooking more of the dots together. So I'm hoping that as we develop what we're doing with this, that when you come on and join us each week, we're real open for you to go on our site, let us know you actually have something more that you would like to add to it. If you've read any other books, if you've heard any other particular information that you don't feel we're quite dealing with, please bring it forward. Let us share that, okay? So we're going to start out to allowing Trina Cooper, who is in Denver, Colorado. Trina, I see your beautiful self on there, okay? I'm happy that you're with us. Could you actually cover some of the beginning material that we're looking at here?
Absolutely. So the beginning of this book in chapter 1 is called Validating the Study of Extraterrestrial Life. And since we need to lay down the background behind this, because we do know we're challenging beliefs. So the very first part talks about documenting the study of alien life. And I want to read a little quote. He said, first and foremost, I'd like to establish that I believe the Emerald Tablets represent the writing of an alien, an entity named Thoth. The written and physical evidence left on Earth, especially where the Emerald Tablets are concerned, supports that an alien force has purposely engaged and powerfully influenced mankind. And I have to say that I totally agree with him. After my studies and my travels and things, I'm right in line with where Billy Carson is. So to begin, he wants to talk about what's an alien and why does this hold such power over us? And it holds power because the way aliens have been portrayed in movies and things like that, they've always been kind of negative and scary. Well, he wants us to know that really there's the good and bad of everything. And for other life, there's the good and bad of other life as well. Lives that we don't even know exist or we've never come in contact with. So the definition for alien is something that comes from somewhere else besides the planet Earth. And extraterrestrial means originating, existing, or occurring outside of Earth or its atmosphere. So if you think about it, if that's the definition, when we go to places like the moon or Mars, we're actually alien there. So think about it. It's just a being, a person, someone coming from a different planet and coming here. And for the most part, there's a huge number of people on this planet that believe that this life exists. So now we want to talk a little bit about how those in authority in this Western civilization have actually approached this study. In ancient times, it was very well documented that there was a huge belief in alien life. In fact, so many of the indigenous people actually say there's people from the skies that have come, and they are our ancestors. For the most part, this split happened when the Christian church came into being. And the Christian church kind of divided science with religion and said, you guys deal with the science over here, we'll deal with the religion over here. And they basically said, there isn't any other life. You need to believe in God and believe in Jesus. So for many years, they actually persecuted the scientists who came forward with other ideas. For instance, in 1633, Galileo was jailed for his beliefs in science, that the Earth was actually the center of the universe. And then later on in the 15th century, or I could have been earlier, in the 15th century, Copernicus actually, after studying ancient text, came up with the concept of the fact that the Earth was not the center of the universe, that the sun was actually the center of our solar system, and that other bodies, that other planetary bodies were also involved in this. So eventually, over time, the Catholic Church, or the Christian churches now, have kind of changed their point of view. It's made a reversal. And in fact, the Catholic influence now is really bringing forward a lot of information. There have been conferences held in 2009, 2011, 2014, with the purpose of actually looking at the possibility of alien life existing. And Pope Francis actually was quoted as saying, if an expedition of Martians arrives and some of them come to us and one of them says, me, I want to be baptized, what would happen? Who would open the doors? So they're actually opening it up. And the Vatican Observatory is one of the leading forerunners in this study right now. They are looking at how to bridge that gap between religion and science. In 2009 and 2011, the conferences that were called by Pope Benedict, they brought 32 scientists to address life's origins and whether life existed on other planets. The Vatican Observatory have generated top-notch research. They've brought forward some of the most significant data that's available right now. And they call this astrobiology. So this is an emerging field. This is something that's a developing subject showing up in universities and all kinds of studies around the globe in all different countries. And now what they're doing is looking for consensus. And one of the quotes here from Reverend Fruins is, how can we rule out that life may have developed elsewhere? Just as there is a multitude of creatures on earth, there could be other beings, even intelligent ones created by God. This does not contradict faith because we cannot put limits on God's creative freedom. So the belief that, that we will encounter alien life is very strong in the Christian churches at this point in time. And so after so many centuries of churches denying this, there's a pulling together now of church and science, and more is coming all the time.
To Melbourne, Australia. Marianne, you wanted to cover some of our first chapter?
Yes, I do. Great to be here. You can hear me. So I think after reading this aspect of the book, I really felt like it's almost not possible to believe that there isn't other forms, life forms out there. Because when you think about this, just in our galaxy alone, there are 40 billion Earth-sized planets out there. And there are actually about 3,700 that are orbiting their own sun that are in the zone where they could inhabit life forms, which is huge when you think about it. But I thought a fun little fact was the closest one is 4.4 light years. So it would actually, with our current technology, take us 54,000 years to get there. And that's the closest one that's in the Goldilocks zone. But if you think that's just our universe, when you look at the, that's just our galaxy. So when you look at the other universes, there's like between 2 to 10 trillion galaxies out there in this universe, which is mind-blowing to think about. And it really expands, like if you enjoy meditation and things, it really expands the practice to see just how vast the space is, and very hard to believe that there wouldn't be other life forms out there. In fact, you know, the Vatican and the Christian religions are, I think, are also coming to this, as Trina was sharing, because nowadays that people that used to be burnt at the stake or rejected from the churches are actually being honored, like Galileo or Copernicus or Bruno. And there's lots of other shifts, like they've created conferences on Darwinism and created conferences or exhibits on astrology, which is really showing that there's now this blend between science and faith and religion, that these are coming together so that we don't have to have one without the other, that we can actually look at all things together and include it all. So very powerful times that we're in, and the understanding and acceptance that we're coming to. And I just thought I like this quote in here by the president of the National Institute of Astrophysics. I thought it was really relevant. He said, "It was astronomical observations that let us understand that the Earth and man doesn't have the privileged position or role in the universe. I asked myself, what tools will we use in the next 400 years? And I asked, what revolutions of understanding will they bring about, like resolving the mystery of our apparent cosmic solitude."
Very good. Very, very good. I also like the quote. I'm going to actually share that. I mean, this is pretty much where I feel I exist in everything. I'm very open-minded. I've seen stuff that don't hold weight, and then there's a lot that's very solid. But one of the things that Billy says here, they are markers of authenticity. Our study of the Emerald tablets necessitates that we have a clear and profound understanding of the massive size of our universe. And I mean, I'm a stargazer, and for any of you that spend any time outside under the Milky Way in the sky, for anyone, any intelligent being to possibly think that we are the only ones in this universe has just never made any sense to me. And I mean, not just because I'm sitting here at 79 today, I mean, ever, way back there, okay? So it's like to see this all coming and all that I've learned in all of these years. It's so exciting to be in body, in life. And no matter what our challenges are right now, even looking at this virus and all the political mayhem and all of the crazy stuff that's going down, we're here. You and I, we're here right now because we're part of this and we are on time. And we just need to help get some of this together to understand the actual reality of the genius of why you're here. And what can you do? What are we capable of? Surely not the suppressive little organic mess that we have made to believe that we are as a human. No, it's the magnificence of the universal understanding of what we are in totality, a collective of the universe. I love the little part that we have in our spiritual studies that says that we are not in the universe is in us. I live that, I know that. And it's so very exciting to have someone else actually studying and looking at this with us. So let us get on further. Now we have Geraldine. And Geraldine, I'm looking at you. You're somewhere out there in the forest where you usually are. So Geraldine is actually coming to us from Sydney, Australia. So can you add something to this?
Absolutely. And it's in line with what's been said, that it's not new that we have so-called ancients or aliens. It's the terminology sometimes that may be different. So if we just put in that word angels or gods, we'll see that through so many of the ancient writings, ancient tablets, ancient pictures, ancient drawings, it's all there. And I find it really interesting that, you know, in terms of our education, we're quite often shown elements of Sumeria or elements of Egypt. It's sort of like a selective translation that we're given. So if you go back to the original source, there is so much information there on so-called extraterrestrials, which just meaning extraterrestrial meaning Earth, so other than the Earth. And then we look at the religions themselves, and as it's shared with us through Billy's work, we've got Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hindu, Mormon, so many of the religions absolutely have as a primal part descriptions of angels that come to them or gods, and it's always portrayed as those who are extra to earth or extraterrestrial or alien. And even in the Bible itself, it says, make sure you remember, or it says, don't forget to show good manners to extraterrestrials, as indeed many times they've been shown to be angels. So in that way, this isn't new. And I think that's a key part to start with right now. It's not new. So then moving forward, we then say, well, what else could this, what are the influences here? And there's a Human Genome Project that many people are probably aware of. And they have some of them in that project have some conclusions that 97% of the non-coding DNA, non-coding means our DNA strands have little codes upon them that relate to specific proteins that we use. Now, there's a lot of codes in there or a lot of DNA in there that doesn't translate to any particular protein that we use. Indeed, up to 97%. And the theory is that this is from those extra to Earth who have come, and in essence, the humans then are a depository or a place for a lot of that DNA in our own beingness. We have the DNA from other planets. And then they say it's not only us, there are many planets. And as you heard from Marianne, the number of exoplanets, that's the number of planets that are able to have life forms in our definition, and it says that will be almost as countless as stars. So we have some pictures here to say, yes, this is not new. And in addition to that, our own DNA carries that of extraterrestrials. And then the completion of these pages, Carl takes us on a little bit of a journey and shows how in one of his video clips, he uses a wristwatch sort of device to open a portal and step into Egypt. And he said, imagine you're one of the people in Egypt seeing someone come through a portal with these sort of technological devices. It would be natural to call them, an angel or something really quite amazing. So allowing yourself to say, what if? Allow yourself to say, what if? And then go back to primary sources of information and be quite amazed at not only who you are, but our much bigger history.
All right. Thank you very much. You look very beautiful. So it looks like you've been collecting some sun rays to get you through the winter ahead of you.
I have, and stars. Last night we were out under the stars taking photos, and just what you said, just looking at the photo, it really brought up that some are blue, some are orange, some are yellow, and just so appreciative of all of this. This is all of this.
It's beautiful. I actually had time to get in contact with a friend that's actually at one of the observatories and observing the meteorite that's supposed to whisk past us or land on us, however they're going to measure it, on the 28th of this month. And it was like really scary to see the size of this thing through that kind of telescope. Mm-hmm. I mean, so when we look out at the skies and we see those little tiny blips of shooting stars, we call them, these things are mammoth, all right? And it's like, it really gets you in touch with how alive it is. This is not just a still shot, This is not a two-dimensional display of something. This is really in-depth dimensionalization. And I get so excited with it. I just get lost. It's very easy to move on up there, okay? So now we're going to go over, and Gabby, are you with us? Gabby's in Mountain Beauty, Australia. I don't see her on the screen. Do we have Gabby?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Great.
Hello there. I'm looking at chapter 2, and it gives us a little bit of historical information about the Emerald Tablets. The tablets were written by Thoth, who was a god of wisdom and knowledge. He was the highest priest in Atlantis, and he also reigned as a king in Egypt, or also called Kem, for about 16,000 years, from around 50,000 BC to about 36,000, 34,000 BC. After this time of reign, he decided to return to the great halls of Amenti, which are a place beneath the earth, the most secret and highly guarded of all, where he went to rejuvenate before incarnating again on earth. Upon leaving Egypt to enter the great halls of Amenti, he wrote the Emerald Tablets. There is believed to be 15 in total. There's a bit of a juggle about numbers, but about 15 in total, depending on how the pages were labeled at the time. Or pages, the tablets were labeled at the time. And there's an extra tablet that comes up as a tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, which is a single tablet. I will explain a little bit more about that later. It's a little bit different to the 15 we're talking about here. Hermes, the Greek god, and Thoth were believed to be the same. So the Emerald Tablets were written for the enlightenment of people, especially for the ones who would respond to lift their consciousness. They were written in the ancient Atlantean language, and which is fascinating is they were made of an imperishable material. They were both in atomic and cellular structure fixed. They would not ionize like other materials would. And that's unusual because a lot of ancient scriptures were written on perishable materials, such as papyrus or baked clay tablets. So that's quite unusual. And, you know, I find it fascinating to visualize the emerald color of the tablets, and they're described as being bound together by golden hoops of aloe. So I just love that. Thoth also built the Great Pyramid of Giza upon his leaving, and he built those for two reasons: A, to safeguard the emerald tablets, but also to conceal the entrance to the great halls of Amenti. Later on in the world, the Greek god Hermes, who is Thoth as well, brought the same teachings to the world. And in the book, it's also mentioned, it's very obvious, and we see that later in chapter 3 and onwards when we read about through the tablets, is that the Bible has very similar teachings, which brings up the question, who was Jesus? But also, you know, as I mentioned, just Carson mentions in his book, the Bible talks about space travel. The Bible also talks about alien visitations, just as an example, but more of that later from chapter 3 onwards. Around 1200 BC, there was much unrest in the world, even in Egypt, and the tablets were actually taken around the world by some priests and their knowledge in some way, with Thoth's assistance, from what I understand, causing somewhat a religious rebirth in the world. The priests managed to bury the tablets again, but this time beneath a Mayan temple in the Aztec region in what's now Central America. And the Aztecs knew of Thoth. They had names for him, as they knew him as Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan. Now, moving forward, after the First World War, Thoth asked a spiritual psychologist and priest himself, Maurice Doreal, to recover the ancient tablets and translate them. So Doreal did this. He was allowed to keep a copy of the translation, but he was also asked to return the tablets to their original place at the pyramids of Giza. And in the book, it says beautifully, and you can tell I'm a visual person, as Doreal brought the tablets to the pyramid of Giza, Thoth took them and once again sealed them safely in this place, in this beautiful place, securing them. As we know, the Emerald Tablets were written in Atlantean language. So how did Doreal interpret them, translate them? He had guidance and inspiration by Thoth. And it's compared to the Bible translation or writing of the Old Testament, because for those of you who know those scriptures, God gave the word to the prophets in a very similar way. So there's a similarity again. And I found a a lovely description related to translating the ancient Atlantic language and tablets, which I would like to read out. It says, characters which respond to the attuned thought waves, releasing the associated mental vibration in the mind of the reader. And I find that quite beautiful how this works. So the Emerald tablets have teachings about wisdom, immortality, knowledge, but also instructions in alchemy, the ancient art of chemistry, and also astrology and magic. And just a notice here, the name Chem, the other name for Egypt, actually stems from the word alchemy. So, yeah. Coming back to that one tablet of Hermes and Thoth, because they're the same, it is different to the other tablets that Billy Carson translates and speaks of in this book, as in it is a listing of about 14 important parts of the wisdom and knowledge transferred, something like as above, so below, and they're quite listed. And it's very different to how the Emerald tablets, the many others of them that we're looking at in this book, are written, because they are written in verse form. And when I look at them and when I read the words, I find them like poetry. And we will discover more in chapter 3, where he will look at the tablets and explore more about the similarities to what's written in the Bible. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think it's really a worthy time to spend with the 14, with this particular one on page 35, and actually going through the 14 points that's been made here. Dr. Durrell's actuality of it, I feel, is actually beautiful, agreeing with you. It's almost poetic, okay? And then there's the profound points it's made in the scientific reflection on that with the 14. And what I did is, after, with the accumulation of tons of stuff that I have over the years of my life, which I feel many of you have, is that when I begin to actually look at these 14, and I used each one of them, like number 1, 'tis true without error, certain and most true. Now that, you know, I'm well versed in a lot of that, it's like, okay, what were you trying to say there? What was the point that you wanted to make? Because a novice or an unlearned person that has not have any of this, what would they make of that? You know, how impactful could that be? All right. And then I just kind of handled them all like that. And I feel it's a real test to see what it is you know, and how would you actually express further in detail the little kind of short notes that's been made here on the 14 items. I found it very exciting. And then as I begin to read all of what I could add to it, I become quite impressed with exactly how much I've learned and how much we as beings have actually been able to access even after this. And I think that Carson does such a beautiful work at helping add his comments and his research and stuff to it, which is what I'm hoping that all of you do. All of you who've come to this has a curiosity. Well, what have you been doing with that curiosity? What could you add to this? So right now we're kind of covering text, but I don't want you to think this is what we're going to do each week. We're actually going to begin to pull out of the chapters certain parts of it that we want to have real open discussion on. So all of you have to be willing to come into it and actually participate with us. So this is not us just talking at you. We really want to create a forum and a circle of communications so that all of us become very enriched with more than what we can find in this book by sharing. Okay, so prepare yourselves for that. All right, we're going to move on now, and actually we have Mike Dillard in Montreal, Canada, and I can see you on the screen, Mike. So could you actually share your particular input on that material?
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
We hear you real good.
Perfect. So in this section is kind of a continuation, and Billy is building up his arguments for the importance and the validity of the tablets. He wants to lay the foundation for bringing together ancient civilizations and beings from outside of Earth. And he does it by illustrating how several important people throughout history have been connected to the tablets. He starts off, first of all, by reminding us a little bit, as was said earlier, that when we talk of Thoth, we really need to realize that we're talking about a being that spanned at least three different reincarnations. So in Sumeria, he was known as Ningshu Zida. In Egypt, obviously Thoth, and then finally later Hermes Trismegistus. Excuse me. So to get started, to just give you some of these examples, for example, Francis Bacon, who was very well known for having decoded the prophet Ezra's message regarding the king's temple passages in the Bible as referring to Solomon's temple. But the real truth of it is that Solomon's temples is full of symbols to hide the fact that Ezra was really referring to the temple under the Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how he ties all that together. He goes on to say, as has been said earlier also, that Thoth designed and built the Great Pyramid, and he wrote the Book of the Dead. And much of the essence of the hidden mysteries that form the basis for the Bible originate there, because that's where in the ancient times hidden mysteries were taught at that spot in that location throughout history. He talks about how Jesus and his mother spent years in Egypt and actually lived in the basement of a Coptic church. Jesus studied Egyptian mysteries, taught reincarnation and meditation, had a wife and children, and he later on traveled to Tibet and to India, where he learned energetic healing. And Billy himself believes that actually Thoth, or Jesus was Thoth's son. The point is that much of the information about Jesus and about that time has actually been surgically removed from traditional history by the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Just as a kind of an aside point, the Council of Nicaea took place when the Emperor Constantine basically ordered all of the bishops of the Christian church to get together and agree on what would form the basis for the new religion, or the religion of Christianity. And it was at that council that many of the Gospels and writings of the early church members were removed from circulation and disappeared. As only recently some of those writings are coming back up. And at that time also, any reference to reincarnation was removed from the Catholic or the Christian church. And to illustrate how ancient these tablets actually are, Billy explained that both the Queen of Sheba and Solomon knew of the Emerald tablets, and that both of those people, those personalities, were significant figures in both Jewish, in Islamic, and also in Ethiopian cultures. Mm-hmm. He also talks about reincarnation, because that's the other side of the whole argument that he's putting together. And he says that the concept of reincarnation goes back, and he even goes back as far as Pythagoras, and says that Pythagoras taught about reincarnation, and he was influential in the writings of Plato and in Alexander, and that he believed and talked about a universal music in the cosmos that permeates everything. Billy talks also about Copernicus and Isaac Newton, who were two big giants, obviously, in Western science, and that they had believed that there was a secret knowledge that was only available to initiated people. And that there were a lot of other giants throughout history, like Plutarch and Aristotle, Virgil, Homer, and a whole bunch of others who had been initiated into this ancient secret knowledge. He's obviously tying this back to the knowledge that comes from the Emerald tablets. He talks as additional proof of the tablets. Manetho, an Egyptian priest during the 3rd century, authored a book called The History of Egypt. And at that time, he reported that Thoth had written over 36,500 books. And so he was talking about the history of Egypt, and we're talking like 3 centuries BC. So it was already ancient at that time. Titus Flavius Clemens is another person that Billy talks about. He was one of the early scholars of the Christian church from the 2nd century. And he confirmed in his book, the Miscellanies, that the teachings of the ancients, including the book of Thoth and Hermes, heavily influenced Christianity. And it's especially interesting to note when most of his pupils, this Titus Flavius Clemens, most of his pupils actually ended up being some of the early fathers of the church. Philip of Tripoli translated an ancient Greek text called The Secret Book of Secrets. That's a great title, Secret Book of Secrets, and showed that it contained the teachings of Hermes as well as references to the secret wisdom of Thoth. And that text was actually one of the most popular books during the Middle Ages among the high and mighty. He talks about Roger Bacon, whose major work was called Opus Majus, which means major work. And he had sent it to Pope Clement, and Pope Clement was very well versed in all of these teachings. Francis Bacon, Sir Francis Bacon, had apparently discovered the key to the subterranean chambers beneath the Great Pyramid, so he said. And he himself had been initiated into the secrets of the Templars, and he coded a lot of his writings using an understanding of 33. One of the codes that he used was actually called the Capital Initial Code, and when you use it, it spelled out the words, "The Temple of Solomon is hidden under the pyramid."
Yes.
And he had another cipher another code that he deciphered that produced Jesus Christ, Initiation, and Pyramid. So that's pretty cool. Carl Jung was another one he talks about. Carl Jung was a famous psychoanalyst that everyone knows. He wrote a book called The 7 Sermons to the Dead, which was clearly inspired by the Emerald Tablets. Billy makes a reference also to the age of the pyramid and dispels, the traditional theories that they built mud ramps and all this kind of thing, which clearly, from an engineering perspective, makes no sense, especially since there's no remnants of them around. And being a civil engineer, I can probably agree with that. He refers to the books and the works of Robert Schoch, who believes that the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx are both much older than generally accepted by Egyptologists. I actually saw the documentary that Robert Schoch put together, and it's fascinating because he shows on the sides of the walls that surround the Sphinx all of the places where the rock has been eroded away by water. And so at some point in the past history, all of the area around the Sphinx was covered in water, rushing water, because it was moving fast enough to erode the rock. And they know from geological records that there has been no water in that area in any great amount for over 10,000 years. So all of this current dating of the pyramids makes no sense. He also says that obviously that the Egyptians didn't build the Great Pyramid. He said earlier that Thoth did. He also says that the Mayans and the Aztecs, neither did they create the complex at Teotihuacan. He said that was there long before the Mayans or the Aztecs emerged. But that the complex itself, obviously, and I've been there, actually I was there with grandmother 30 years ago this year. Yeah. It shows that whoever built it had a very, very complex understanding of architecture, mathematics, astronomy. And when the whole area is actually viewed from above, the whole complex there, it actually resembles an electrical circuit. Yeah. And that there are 2 underground channels that link everything together that are lined with insulators. So basically the whole site is just one big, huge electronic device. And he enumerates some of the actual similarities between the pyramids of Giza and those in Central America. And I didn't know some of this before, but it's very interesting that the bases of the pyramids in Egypt and Mexico are the same size. I didn't know They're aligned, obviously, in a pattern that reflects the stars in Orion's belt. I think lots of people have heard that. And that the height of the pyramid in Mexico is exactly 1/2 the height of the Great Pyramid in Giza. And both of them sit above aquifers. Built into the pyramid of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza, there's a complex mathematical relationship between the number of sides of the, and Billy goes through that. He explains how the number sides of the pyramid, the number of steps on each side, and the number of days in the year multiplied all together actually point out to the geometric latitude of the pyramid of that structure. And I can say that after reading this whole section, I got the impression that there's obviously some very sacred knowledge that's been shared with a small number of initiates that goes back way before pre-recorded history, and that the knowledge has been encoded into tablets and sacred structures throughout the world.
All right. Fantastic presentation, Mike. And I love how you brought in some additional material. That's exactly what we want to do each week, is just bring in additional perspective and material. That's why it's good to have a various amount of people talking about it, okay? One of the things that I want to note here, though, that I'm very impressed with, okay, I am a seeker of truth. I want you to show me where you got your information. I want to know that it's valid and that it has a base of factual reports in it. And I love how Billy, being probably of the same nature, and I will be meeting him very soon, is that how he's given you at the end of each one of these websites and further places for you to go explore. I hope you're taking time to do that, because what it does is it just opens up. You could take 4 or 5 of these pages and spend a week on them. You know what I mean? Just following up with all this information. And that's how you begin to actually get more clarity of where your perspective of who you are comes in, okay? When I've actually studied theology most of my life, trying to find out why it is that we make such separation in our beliefs and our worship. And what I see in all of this that's happened is that often I ponder when I'm out in the garden and stuff, and the chimes are going, the wind is with me. I wonder where we would be today if this information had not been selective to just a few, and how our young people, how our life would be different if we actually had this knowledge. And where religions are to liberate us, how much our religions have been to teach us fear and control instead of liberation. And as we begin to, every one of you that's participating with us on this little book study thing that we're doing, by the time this starts to get out, I've already got numerous people asking me, can we have permission to start viewing this, putting it out there? Let's get more of this out. And I wanted to do that. So each one of us have a responsibility to do our part, to add to it, to put to it what we realize. The usual 9 to 5 person comes in and has tea, coffee, or a beer, sits down to the evening news, goes to bed, gets up again. Okay, we need to have the mass knowing more. And I realize that when I get invited to churches and people invite me to speak in that, I do honor, and I don't go in a negative way to make them wrong. Okay, I find some part of this that I can add to what they are believing, what they are practicing, and allows them to get curious enough to seek on their own to go find more answers. Okay, and sometimes I do this wonderful act that I have learned from my grandmother, to where instead of telling people something or pointing out something that's going to contradict them, I ask questions. So I play this confused grandmother and I ask these questions, and it's like I'm asking them to help me understand. And by the time they give their particular answers, I'll throw a little further something in there. Well, so-and-so said, or here there was a recording, or here's some historical value. And then I watch how people stop. There's like that moment where you've got them, they stop, and then they, okay. So I know that they're going to go look further. And at this point, if we could just get those who sit in churches every Sunday, doing their very best, good people, wonderful, good people, that could possibly know the additional truth of what we're talking about here and how that could play into what our world is becoming, because it is in this world, according to all the prophecies of my people, we will make that shift. And I truly believe this little bit of time we're spending right here doing what we're doing right now will actually be part of that. So I appreciate that, Mike. That was a fantastic, definitely good coverage, okay? And Deb is in Kingman, Arizona. Are you with us? I see you there. Can you?
I certainly am. I certainly am. And just to allude in a little more detail, when Mike talked about the structures in the Aztecs and the Mayan structures, not actually being built by them, but it's known that they were actually in place and that the Mayans inherited those structures. Just as an example, El Caracal, it's an ancient observatory in Chichen Itza in the Yucatan in Mexico that is known to have been built by who the Mayans called Kukulkan, which is Thoth. And its appearance actually resembles a modern day observatory. Yet its construction date is given around 600 AD, but we know it's probably much more older. Now, a few facts. Venus is known as Earth's twin and as the god of war, and the Mayans gave a great significance to Venus. They planned their raids according to Venus's position in the heavens, and the great staircase of El Caracal was actually built to perfectly match Venus's most northerly position in the sky. And what fascinates me is that we often consider ancient civilizations to be primitive, and yet the measurements that are in these buildings, we have developed our most sophisticated equipment now to be able to measure them, but how did they achieve those then is the question, okay? The staircase faces 27.5 degrees north, in line with all the other buildings at the site. Furthermore, the other buildings form a diagonal at the northeast and southwest corners in a perfect alignment with both the winter solstice and the summer solstice sunsets. So there's further evidence of an extremely advanced knowledge that went into these structures that we would consider impossible, really, if we think of the primitive ancient cultures. But the thread that ties all of that together, as has been talked about throughout today, is Thoth and the knowledge that was brought to us. There's one other reference that I found fascinating because I'm a big fan of Star Trek and NASA, and there was a discovery of a relief that they call Rocket Man. And it's actually, if you are familiar with how the astronauts sit waiting for the launch, they're on their backs, looking like they're on a couch, looking up, and that is the exact picture of this relief that was made thousands and thousands of years ago. Who knew? How did they know that? Where was that knowledge coming from? Yeah. So, it talks about also that the characters and the symbols that are engraved into the tablets in the ancient Atlantean language were said to attune to thought waves, which release an associated mental vibration in the mind of the reader. And that to me also says that there was a form of protection, that one has to achieve a certain elevation of consciousness in order to actually perceive the wisdom. And Carson even in quotes and says, "And for the seeds with open eyes and mind, his wisdom shall be increased 100-fold." So for those who know, you achieve a certain elevated level of consciousness, will be able to be aware and receive these wisdoms. And again, to go back to Star Trek, which always opens with space, the final frontier, I think that inner space is actually the final frontier. And as we explore that more, these great mysteries will open up to us.
Okay. What did you make on, and you haven't said much about the water in the emerald tablets? All right, I just felt it was actually something notable and that we need to pay attention to that, how they actually found water and how the water is extracted from the emeralds. Okay, it is actuality something, and it's considered a nectar to some tribal people that actually changes the brain fluids that actually change the way the people's whole perception of life and light is. So there's a lot to be said for that. Okay, Steve Jones is raising his hand. Steve, you have something you want to add?
Yeah, just with the studies that we've done with water included in the cells, the water is actually.
We have a little bit of a technical. Okay. Go ahead.
So where the water is what actually is giving the information from the frequencies to the cell of how to behave. That there is water within the tablets. Almost gives it like that it's alive and broadcasting from that water. That's what it keyed off to me. There's a similarity there.
Yes. The point that I want to make to that is when you get into the deeper sciences on this, we exist in the primal waters. All matter exists in the primal waters. We think this is open, empty space. It is not. It's not any more empty than the fish that knows it's in the glass bowl. Okay. There's so much in that. And because the tablets can only resonate and actually broadcast, is because there has to be negative ions there. That's water. Okay. And so in all of your practices, I realize that one of the things that's very, very apparent in indigenous American teachings and a lot of the other indigenous peoples around the world, because they're not just in America, okay, is that water plays a very high part of ceremony and calling in the spirits, calling in the energy, working with the vibrations, okay, that in every ceremony there is water that is brought forward and actually exercised or used in order to actually add more negative ions. And that when you really get into the deep studies of physics, you realize that these so-called invisible entities can come in and be visible to us as long as they can actually maintain a presence in a field that there is high negative ions. So what's in a lot of the research and studies that, again, doesn't get out here very popular on the news lines and everything, is that we have found that people who we consider are dead, the research on it is white noise, okay? Get into a room to where there's all kinds of the new sciences and technology there, and we put that particular thing in. There are mediums who can call and communicate with these people, and in most cases, society considers they're quacks or whatever, okay? And we can pick that up on a screen. We can pick that up on your computer screens. So when we're looking at the emerald tablets, okay, one of the things that in all that I have found in my investigations is the tablets actually live between the worlds. And it is because of that water base that they can actually become physical here, and that we have been able to research them and actually have study and ability to understand them. Now, what Dr. Durrell has done is totally different than any of my exploring of this. And that's not to make him wrong. I feel that what he's got has come as far as he could with what he was working with, okay? Right now, I can tell you these tablets do not have a physical existence just in our three-dimensional world. And that through our technology and stuff, I feel it's become almost very dangerously clear how those who have other reasons to want to know about this has actually helped suppress it for all the eons of which they have been more hidden. So as we're working more to have that knowledge that we can work with, we're going to have to depend on actually doing our best to work with what Dr. Durrell's given us, as well as some of the hidden societies that have hidden this knowledge and protected it. I find that sad. I think over my whole life, what I have found very sad is how real the threat is that we do have to protect this knowledge, and it cannot just be broadcast out and given. Look at the media today. Look at what's going on in the media today. You know, how much truth can you really base on anything that's coming across news media? Okay, I know for a fact I can't trust any of it. All right. So basically, then, when we come to the kind of things that we're studying and exploring here, how true to fact can we trust that they'll give us? Don't. Find it on your own, explore it on your own, and share it. You know, be bold and loud is something you hear me say a lot these days, because you need to say what you know. You need to talk about it. How recent was it that as psychics and spiritual people, we were considered the weirdos, talking about things that we can't prove, things are not real? Now look at quantum physics. Now look at all the new sciences that are coming out. They've proven and validated everything that we have ever tried to communicate and share. Okay, and what happened in that? Wonderful, powerful people who had really genuine things to offer started becoming very suppressed and hidden. And we would only share it in small groups. We would only trust to be with people like-minded. No, you can't do that anymore. Now you have to be bold. Now you have to have the courage to stand in front of those who will question you. Now you have to stand on what you believe and you have experienced. We go off on our spiritual journeys. As Mike shared, 30 years ago, I took them into Mexico on the revelations of what we're looking at today. How much then did they understand? Not any of it. It's only that experience can begin to awaken in this time that we're talking now, and how much they really already have. The same with the recent trip to Egypt. How much could you possibly say you understand all the things that I'm taking you to and trying to get you to see when we're in Egypt? Okay, you won't, because you'll awaken to it as you can actually assimilate it. So all of the studies that you've got and all of what you have come to know, I don't want to know what you believe. See, I can argue with your beliefs. I can actually have you question your beliefs. But what you know, what you truly know, they can never, ever take that away. And no matter how they question you, it does not water it down. So you stand on what you know. And how will you know if you're being cautious, if you're being conservative, if you're hesitant? No, you have to get into it. You have to go deep. And the only place that you will make a difference is in self-discovery. And I'm not talking about us going out here and putting all this credit into the tablets. No, how are the tablets working in you? Because see, you are that has to be discovered. Deb was right on. That frontier is not out there, it's in here. And it has been suppressed for eons. When I look at all the new information and I realize all the tribal peoples that are on this planet, they're adept to this. They know this. We have suppressed them and kept them on reservations and kept them out of mass society's face for that reason. They have had to become extremely protective because their villages get raided. They're looking for the objects that have these particular emanations. Okay, no, you have to begin to awaken and get your hand onto it. You have to get your head out of the sand. It's up to you and me to not be conservative on this anymore. Talk about what you know. You can validate everything that you can talk about today on these tablets or anything. Get into your sciences because it's all there. Like I said, what Billy gives you to take you the next step and all of the references he gives you and all the sites he gives you, do that. Get however it will take for you to be sure of yourself. And then once you know that you accept with the total assurance of knowing it, then you talk it. And as you know what you begin to lift yourself. There's sort of like an agreement or a covenant I make with the students who study with me over these years. And in that covenant it says, as I lift myself, I will lift all others unto myself. So significant of that, beloveds, is you are the revelation. You are what we are discovering. The you that these tablets are talking to. The you that has the genetic patterns and actually have the genetic DNA of these gods. You know, often I share and say, crows know how to be crows. Puppies grow up and become dogs. Kittens grow up and become cats. Children of God, who do you grow up to be? Now, it's called show and tell. Know what you know and don't be hesitant to talk about it. Be bold, be loud, be strong. As we go through these tablets and you see how the answers are there, it's not going to do us any good to blame the churches, the clergy, or even the governments. Okay, it is we, the people. And it is in the numbers of what we are and how we can bond collectively in mass to hold a focus that we can validate with what these tablets are saying. We are. You are the magic, if there's any such thing as magic. It's you that will actually make the world peace that we know. We cannot depend on our governments, and we cannot be victims to our churches. We can only look to what we can discover of the what we are. And you have everything in the world to help you open that and liberate all of the knowledge and wisdom that we have stored in our DNA. You stand today as you look in your mirror, and what's looking back at you is all of the generations before you, present in the cellular memory of this embodiment of which you work with. When you hear you're not the body, then you must become aware that there is an intelligence that abides with this body that is everlasting. It is that we come to seek and understand that returns to the halls of Amenti. Your questions that you bring forward, there's so many that are on this particular program and on Zoom to where we have discussed so much in depth those same questions. Please have the courage to come forward and share that. What does that mean, the halls of Amenti? Why does he come back and decide to go down into the darkness, descend into the darkness into Amenti? It's because in the black of the universe, the void of the universe, the so-called nothingness of the universe, resides all the answers of all wisdom, all knowledge, all creation. And when we begin to explore that, okay, I remember how many years ago when I would hear people talk about the darkness, the blackness, the everything, and actually see that it represented evil. You have to understand, with my people, we explored and we understood the void, the blackness. Our teachings are called Raven. The teachings of Raven is about creation, and it comes from the blackness, the black holes that you have. Nasib Harriman and a few of our scientists, our advanced scientists, starting to talk about. You are a black hole. We exist in a black hole. The black hole is where that is the void comes forward. Okay, when you learn that, and then you look at our life, who are you going to blame for what's going on? You cannot find anything out there to blame it on. What is your participation in it? What are you doing with it? Are you just a spiritual lollygag running around the universe, attending every little spiritual visit that you can? Oh, you run off to Machu Picchu, or you run off to Mexico, you run off someplace, and for there you're enlightened for how long? How will that put bread on the table? How would that bring a child into this earth with a future? What is your contribution with all of that? You have gathered much, beloveds. through your learning, through your teachings, through your journeys. But where are you sowing the seeds of the future of that? Where are you when the call for assistance and help comes out? Where are you when the lizard consciousness, of which we will discover through these emerald tablets, is controlling and manipulating? How willing are you to stand in the face of that? See, that's what this is about for me. I am a spiritual activist, and I have been banged on by everything that tries to take me down, discredit me, and make me something I am not. I'm still here, and I'm still talking, and I've never left. I'm looking for you to make good of what time we will spend together. Bring out the beauty in yourself. Bring out the very essence of why you even exist today. And what will you leave in the field? What are you putting in the field of energy around you? Yes, we will drop the body because the DNA was changed many, many eons ago to where the most we could ever expect to live in this body is 150 years. And it was changed so that you would renew faster and that you would forget. So that each time we reincarnate, we have to start from scratch again and pick up only that which we could retain. That's a choice. Did you know that? That's a choice. Thoth shares that in these tablets. So what you are doing now will determine what you will do then. Just as Thoth had to pick up 3 bodies in order to maintain his 36,000 years of rule, well, you do that intermittently. You just don't come back with all you could have had. And it's because you buy into the fact that you believe that you are a body. No, you're not. The body is an elegant, wonderful, magnificent creation of perfection, pure in itself, genius in itself. And you work through it. You, who I call observer, you who is spirit, you who you may refer to as soul. This is the everlasting, and you do return to the halls of divinity. Now, what can you do logically, physically in the world today? I'm hoping that as we cover this and you become more playful with us in this, that you begin to understand the importance for you to share this, to speak about it, to actually support it in every way that you can. It is up to us. You are who you've been praying for. You are the only thing that will change what it is and how it has to be. So with that, let's continue to explore. I don't know where we're at on the clock, so you guys will have to tell me, are we having some more? Okay, so are there any bodies that would like to actually expound on anything that we've studied? Okay, Robbie's got her hands up. Yeah, Robbie.
Okay, well, the first thing that hit me is,
We could see it.
I'm shutting off the feedback here. Okay, the first thing that I noticed is that this dude has a great big bird beak on his face.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, if Thoth was so important to people, why would they make him look like this big old ugly bird? Like, wouldn't that kind of freak people out and make them want to run away?
For sure.
So I did a little bit of research, and I found out that to the ancient Sumerians and the ancient Egyptians, animals were really important. As a matter of fact, they often placed them at the same level of importance as they did other human beings, which is why we see them so many times in the ancient hieroglyphs used to represent different aspects of life. So Thoth was the inventor of the hieroglyphs. He created writing, forms of a written communication. That's what he did.
Yeah.
And so why would they make him look like the ibis? For the ancient Sumerians, the waterways were central to life. They were required for drinking water, obviously, to irrigate the crops, and for transportation. The waterways were, sacred. So in the local climate, in the water, all these little critters grew all the time, like snails and different little critters that would clog up the waterways and make it impossible for other life, for other things to grow. And they generally make a murky mess of it. So the ibis was the bird that went in and ate all these little critters, and in essence, cleared out all of the waterways and brought clarity and life and vitality to the water that was central to the life of the people.
Yes.
So I kind of put two and two together because Thoth brought to the people, he was the record keeper. He wrote down everything that happened and reported it to his dad, who was Ra, the sun god Ra. And basically he brought communication to the people, which was central to understanding life and understanding the importance of, the wisdom that Thoth brought. So he did a lot more than write the emerald tablets. He brought communication to the people and clarity. So that's why I understand, I came to understand that this etherical being was depicted in, the three-dimensional world as an ibis bird, because the ibis was considered sacred, so like essentially sacred to the people of those ancient times. And they would, of course, make Thoth into an ibis bird because that's how important he was to them.
Very, very good. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? And it's very good to see the young people on. So if you have anything you want to ask or come in with, please let us know. Okay. Anybody else have anything you want to add to this? Okay, so what we want to do is actually begin with our next, how we proceed from here, is we'll actually start dealing with actual quotes and material coming right out of the particular tablets and discussing that. So I would ask all of you to read ahead in chapter 3, and any one of you who really feel that you have a particular perspective on it that you'd like to add and share, or some further, like Robbie just did in sharing with us all of the particular information about why Thoth's head looks like that. Okay, I felt you even gave a little bit more information even about how the tablets and communications and stuff. What my question would have been to you, so where do you go with what you've now learned with people who actually think that Thoth was Inky? Anunnaki, Inky? What did your material, if anything, help you clarify with that? Because you said he's the son of Ra.
So he...
Okay, do I have Tom raising your hand? Tom, are you raising your hand? No, okay.
I would see that he is essentially the father of the people, and took the people's needs into his own personal care.
Okay, that's not my question.
Okay.
My question is, okay, a lot of what I read and where we go with Carson here is that there is questions that people have, is Thoth actually Inky, or is he the son of Inky or a descendant of Inky? Did you, in your research that you just did you find any greater clarity of that?
Nothing in that particular research.
That's what I'm asking. Does anyone else have anything on that as far as helping understand the clarity of who Thoth was in the lineage of Inky? Might be something good for some of you to research and bring next week then to our teachings and stuff. And I see a number of young people on. I would love for you to actually read forward in the chapters and from your perspective, because listen, we're finishing up our particular time. You're coming into yours. So if you have questions for clarity and things you'd want to share, because I realize you're all teachers and definitely you've surpassed the ultraviolet children. So if you want to bring stuff to the particular program, please do that. Read ahead, find something that you speak to or something you can add, you know, maybe not just what's here, but this led you to something else. And we would really appreciate hearing from you and any of the others that are on the line. Okay, so while you're moving through everything and coming to the next part of chapter 3, and we went to this, I'm actually going to be planning a trip to the Four Corners. And I think Mike and a few of the other people on here that was with me in the Four Corners. I mean, I remember how we went through Cuba about 3 times. So while we were on our journey through Four Corners, actually there's a lot of history that I want to bring back and discuss as to places that we can actually go to quite easily and get a lot of time on space with that. Coming back to a place you've explored and coming now with the wisdom of what you know, there's so much advantage to have to that. There were people who are on this call that joined me in the desert of Arizona, and we were actually on Hopi native indigenous people's lands. And on the rock that they stood on, when we called forth the medicine ways, there was a great cloud that come. And Elizabeth Ritchie and some of them that was there with me, Elizabeth, they went out on the rock and sat, and I said to them, just meditate and understand that you become full exchange of earth and sky, and you will become lightning. And they were a little bit not willing to believe that, but they went along with my madness, and they went out on the rock and they sat there and they went through the practice of that. And I would say that most of them, and we're talking a decent large number of people, actually experienced becoming lightning. And when they watched it, they was the streak of lightning that went to the cloud and came back. Okay, these are revelations of ourself. These are not sensationalizing anything. This is you coming to the realization that you are these elements. And in these tablets, it tells you come to grip with the fact you are those elements. And when we come to actually experiencing that, because of the electromagnetic field that has to have the very, very definite combination to be lightning, and lightning doesn't come down, it comes out of the earth and up. So it come right through that stone and went right through these people and went up to the cloud, and they could see the flash and everything. Pictures taken of the flash coming out of them. Elizabeth has very long hair. She's on our call. And Elizabeth's hair everybody's hair began to lift and come straight up, because we were in the field that was right for that. But because we were in the particular state of mind, okay, that we were in, there was no harm to anyone. Yet the lightning moved through them. These are things that are uniquely human. There's not any one of us that has been given that gift. We all have it in this DNA, along with a lot more that you can do and be. So it is in exploring that we want to come to. Those of you who have had these experiences of what the tablets are revealing, please don't hide anymore. Please come forward and share. Do not be afraid or ashamed or hesitant. It's time that you let people know what you've experienced and the distance we have come from being totally suppressed in religious dogma and very, very hard royal impressions of family and royalty. Okay, even understanding that we were created, our physical bodies were created as slaves for the Anunnaki. We got so far ahead of them in evolution that they could not stay here. That's why they're not present here, beloveds. They couldn't, because we have moved past the margin they set for us. Well, as this meteorite comes that is prophesied to be their return, Let's show and tell exactly what we have and what we have evolved to. This is our time. Let us be all that we can be. I truly appreciate all the time you spent with us, and I hope you've enjoyed it and you find it exciting. Please go into the next chapter with a thirst and a hunger that you bring back all kinds of information and stuff you're willing to share. And may you all be safe and always know that you are loved and you're never alone. Ocio, have a great week.